Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com, and we are looking at Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. Joining me today, I have Jonathan and Chris from the Minute Impossible podcast. Hey, guys.
Terrence Howard. More Terrence Howard.
Stamp. Right. Terrence Stamp. Terrence Stamp.
Minute 54 starts with Tony interrupting Rhodey, and it ends with Rhodey getting ready to tell Tony what he needs. A little talking to, apparently, is what's happening here. This is the scene we've been complaining about. Started complaining yesterday. Now we have Tony popping up and interrupting. And, it's that typical Tony Stark joviality. We've got that jokiness that he's got with all of these students. And, it's a nice scene. It plays fine. It's the relationship between these two guys we get here. Even if the scene it's not necessary. But I don't know. What do you guys think of this scene?
Well, also, this scene is the unveiling of Tony Stark's Tig Notaro hair.
His hair is very different than the rest of the movie, so that leads me to believe, like you were saying yesterday, it's a reshoot.
I mean, his hair slicked back the whole movie, and this is garbage.
Yeah.
It's very loose. That's they got loose hair.
Either that or it was one of the first things they shot before they realized that they wanted his hair slicked back. One of the two. It's either reshoots or first thing.
Nah, I'm going with reshoot.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. I mean, I would think that because we're at Edwards Air Force Base, that they were trying to get all the stuff done at Edwards at the same time. But it is possible that they were trying to find a way to kind of tighten things up with this scene and just clean it up in some way. But it's still.
Also, we don't know if this is Edwards Air Force Base being used. Could be a.
Well, they filmed all of their military stuff at Edwards Air Force
so
Base.
They wouldn't have moved the airplane somewhere else, right?
No, I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
All right.
I haven't seen anything about them filming at any other Air Force bases.
But them shooting this at night would probably be. I mean, obviously that's when they were doing the other stuff. The day stuff is day stuff. You can't fake it. But this just, if it's a reshoot, just hey, can we come in for half a day tomorrow night and start at midnight and we'll go till 4 a.m, 4 or 5.
Yeah, one of those things. It's an odd. I don't know. I don't know. I just struggle with it because it's a scene where Tony comes in. He's got this. Like I said, he's got the banter with the students. That whole joke about Rhodey's past. Which I guess the whole thing with Spring Break 1987. Ugh. That lovely lady. What's his name?
Little Gay Panic.
Was it Ivan? Yeah, right.
Though it's not needed. It's a joke that's like, okay, all right.
It's 2008. We're still making jokes like that. But yeah, I don't know. Is it Terrence Howard's acting? I do feel like
yes.
Is it the acting or is it just the script?
Is there blame to throw? It is Terrence Howard's acting. I'm gonna always be on the side of it's Terrence Howard's fault.
Well, I know you are, but I feel like the script is crap too here.
It doesn't help him.
No, at all.
And also, Tony Stark doesn't feel like Tony Stark. Like RDJ doesn't like he does that little story, but it's like a bad long form improv where they're like, what kind of scene are we doing? We're in an Air Force hangar. Okay. What is my character's motivation? You're trying to get a suit of armor made. Okay. And what is his? He doesn't want to listen. Okay. Here we go. We're going to do the scene. And they do the scene. It doesn't feel written. It feels very off the cuff. And it compared to how tight the last scene was and how well it worked between two people.
Yeah.
This may also be why Terrence Howard is no longer working on this movie. There's just no chemistry.
It plays very roughly. And I feel like the script, everything about it just feels awkward. And I get it. They're going for this place where Tony is like, I'm creating something. I want you to be a part of it, but it's not for the military. But it's like, why is he, what's the motivation here? And obviously they're pulling from the history. I mean, there is a very long history that we have in the comics between Tony and Rhodey. Mm-hmm. And it's great the way that it plays out in the comics. It's a really interesting relationship, actually. And so I get it. They're trying to kind of keep that relationship going here, but it's a scene that just is like, it just goes nowhere. It's so frustrating.
And we know they can write it because how come Happy's been in this movie a fraction of the time and we're all good with their relationship?
Yeah, right.
Like it's totally rings true. And now it's also the director. But what was going on set? And this goes back to why Terrence Howard may no longer be on the movie. He may have just not gelled.
Well, that's possible. The story, according to Terrence Howard, is that when it came time to make Iron Man 2, when they offered him the part, his pay was drastically cut because, as he said, Robert Downey Jr. wanted to make a lot more money, and so they took all of the money for Robert Downey Jr. out of Terrence Howard's salary. And so his salary increased while Terrence Howard's dropped, and he didn't think that was fair, and so he backed out. That's his story.
How would he know that?
He had a contract for multiple films at a certain price, which is the same price he made for this movie, because he made more money on this movie than Robert Downey Jr. did.
Right.
But when time came for the second movie, they were like, yeah, no, Robert should be making more money, and he wanted to make the same money, and they were like, yeah, we can lose you. So, yeah.
In the greatest way possible. Hey, It's me. Get over it.
Exactly.
Well, and if he had played it smart and just like, okay, I'm excited to be a part of the project, we would still have Terrence Howard in as Rhodey, but maybe that would be something that none of us were that thrilled about, because I know I really love Don Cheadle when he comes and takes over.
I love Don Cheadle.
Yeah, he's so, and that's where the camaraderie. You're like, now I've seen Don Cheadle in other shows, and he seems to have this camaraderie with everybody. So I think Don Cheadle brings the RDJ vibe himself.
Yeah, I agree.
Once he and RDJ get together, you're like, oh well, this was meant to be.
Right. Well, there's like that one scene in, I mean, I know we're jumping forward here, but there's that one scene in Age of Ultron where they're trying to lift the hammer, Thor's hammer, and they both got the gloves on, the gauntlets on, and they're trying to lift it, and they're talking to each other jokingly to try to get it going. And then the chemistry there alone is like 100 times more than the chemistry that he's got with
Terrence
Howard in
even
this whole movie.
pulling? Are you even doing it? Dude, I'm doing it.
Exactly. I love that little bit. It's a throwaway thing, but it's so great because it shows who they really are as friends. And I don't think we ever got that moment in this movie here.
No, I just think I just don't think it gels. And that's not Terrence Howard's fault on that level. If they don't gel, they don't gel.
Right.
Him coming off with now having excuses for it. Hey, guess what? He's very successful. He doesn't need me to like him. But this movie is better without him, because that's where we are right now. We're in Terrence Howard is in this movie. So
yeah, and it's a scene that, I mean, it's I don't know what else we can say about this scene. We'll talk more about it tomorrow because we got to finish it. We got to finish it off.
Get your
tomorrow.
title tonight. It's Terrence Howard is in this movie.
No, Terrence Howard is in this scene.
And the rest of the movie, he has to go through more Terrence Howard scenes. I don't have to do that.
Yeah, I've got to finish.
No.
Talking about him, but again, it's not as focused on Terrence Howard as or on Rhodey as we will be in future films.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think again, this was a pickup, and the other scenes were shot as small piece. He was just a small piece. They just needed someone from the Air Force or the military's POV to be giving feedback on Iron Man, because Iron Man is basically a living, breathing weapon.
Well, that's the big change with the character of Rhodey, because he was never in the military in that capacity in the comics. He was always Tony's pilot, and then he ended up becoming Iron Man when Tony went on his drinking binge, and then later down the line, he became War Machine. So it's kind of a much more interesting relationship, I think. But I can see why they may have wanted to kind of go the military route with him, just to really emphasize that weapons designer and that kind of connection to the military. I think that it works in context of the way the story is told in the film,
Yeah, I agree too.
I agree.
So, well, I don't know if there's anything else to talk about here for this one. So, we got a little more time today. So why don't you guys tell me a little bit about your background with Iron Man? Were either of you guys comic book readers?
Yeah, I was. I mean, obviously I was. I think Jonathan was too, right? Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Did you guys read Iron Man? Because I had read comics, but I had never read an Iron Man comic.
No, I was a big Iron Man kid.
When I was reading Iron Man, he was in the red and white armor.
Oh, okay.
So it was later. He had the triangle. So this would have been mid-90s.
I was reading him in the mid-80s, like 84, 85. That's when I started reading Iron Man. So he was still...
Oh, and he's still drinking?
Yeah, he was still drinking and all that.
I think the drinking was 70s into the early 80s, right?
But I don't know if he was drinking as much then, but I remember it being, that he was in the gold, and red outfits still with the circular arc. I mean, it was probably between 84 and 87 that I was reading it, as well as Captain America. Those were like two that I always read, and X-Men. Those were my comic books. And then, I mean, to tell you the truth, it's hard to remember a lot about that because I was reading so many back then, but I always remember loving Iron Man back then. And I was excited when over the years they kept talking about making a movie because I always thought it was a great idea. But, some of the people who were involved, I wasn't really gung-ho about, except for when they said Tom Cruise at one point, I was pretty excited about that. But then I wasn't excited about like Nick Cassavetes doing it or some of the other people that they talked about,
Yeah, right.
So when
yeah, it was a strange choice.
Yeah.
Who was it that had the first Fantastic Four that never got? We can now see it.
Roger Corman, that they made that quick.
Oh, Corman,
the quickie one
Corman.
for $1 million. Yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean,
Wow.
I mean, Iron Man's gone through so many hands. He was at, I think at one point he was at New Line. I think another point he was part of the deal with the Concorde and Canon thing that they were doing for a while, where Canon had the rights to so many characters like Spider-Man and stuff like that back in the 80s when they wanted James Cameron to do Spider-Man. But just the idea, when this was announced and I heard that Favreau was on and Robert Downey, I was so excited just because I love Favreau as it is. And then Robert Downey Jr. I always loved. And this was coming off of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was just amazing.
Such a great
So
movie.
the idea of him playing Iron Man to me was just like perfect. I mean, he was the Iron Man in my head. Once I heard it, I was like, I can't imagine anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I followed the movie pretty closely until it came out, and I went to see it opening night, the midnight show on the Thursday before. And my son was born the year before, so he was still he was barely a year old when this came out. And I went to the midnight show by myself because I had to, and I was so excited about it. I had to tell everybody to go see this thing after that. And just the prospect of it being a series and that someday we would get an Avengers movie was something I couldn't even imagine when I was reading these comics back in the 80s, let alone when I saw the movie, So here we are 10 years later.
Sure. And when at the end of this movie, the Avengers Initiative being even teased, even breathed out loud. I mean, I lost my mind.
And see, the thing is, I read about that prior to the movie. So I was sitting in a theater by myself at like 2 a.m. when it was rolling credits and people were leaving. And I would tell people who were there in their Iron Man shirts, I go, no, stay, trust me, stay. Because, so many people didn't know about that ending. And, but I think after the first couple of days, the word got out about it that, to me, the year it came out, that was, like I said, it was also the year that Dark Knight came out. So this and Dark Knight were like my two favorite films that year, but it was also the month that the new Indiana Jones movie came out. So I was so excited about just the prospect of another Indiana Jones film that once I saw this movie a couple of weeks before Indiana Jones had a lot to live up to because I was already on board about this because this made me feel the way that I saw when I saw Raiders for the first time. I felt that way about this movie the first time I saw it. And it's still one of those movies that I watch 3 or 4 times a year because I just enjoy it. And even if I'm not watching it, it's on in the background. Like it was the other day when I was watching it.
My kids don't watch this one. My kids don't binge on this movie, and my kids don't really read comic books. So, but they do love the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Like my son and I are the first ones in line to go see.
Yeah, my son loves the universe, but
out.
he doesn't read comics either. He loves the movies. It's the same thing.
My kids burned out on the movies, and my wife gave up on them a while ago, and I've been making them all go back through them. And I think they're all enjoying them because we're finally back up to Black Panther, and everybody is now completely caught up through Black Panther. And I feel like we're at a great place right now because I'm very much looking forward to showing my wife Infinity War soon. So she can finally catch up.
I remember taking my son to see Iron Man 2, and I think he was probably 4, maybe 3 or 4, and he went nuts. I mean, he was all about Iron Man after that. And I mean, he had masks and the little gauntlets and the toys. And then when Avengers came out, he was even more nuts about it. I mean, he's just been nuts since then. And now it's like a new Marvel movie. I mean, when the trailer came out for Endgame the other week, it was just like, he was nuts about it. He was more excited about it than even I was. So I think this generation is really all about it,
And it's so funny because Iron Man was not one of the top iconic Marvel characters.
No,
I mean,
not at
Spider-Man
all.
and Hulk were always like the top two, hence the number of projects that the two of them had. But Iron Man was pretty far down the list to the point where they had to create some short films, animated films, to kind of help explain to people who this character was. Because a lot of people thought he was a robot. It's so funny looking back on pre-2008 opinions of who Iron Man was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like my son loves he used to love those animated films that Lionsgate was making when they had the rights to it for the animated films. And even like things like when they did the Young Avenger or the New Avengers and those ones, he liked all of those films. So he'd watched all of those growing up. So to him, he knows a lot more about the characters because of those animated films, surprisingly, than I can remember sometimes because of the knowledge that they throw out on those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
It's nice that Marvel had kind of figured things out far enough. And you know, they knew that they didn't want to throw in the little bit with Nick Fury at the end of like Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, which came out the year before this. It was smart for them to wait until, you know, they're kind of doing it all on their own. And here they are. Let's kind of try this out and see what we can do with it. And it's so smart of them to do this.
I think also, you know, the fact that there were so many rights issues over the years.
Yeah.
And there was a whole thing about, you know, who owned what and having, you know, auctioned off characters and, you know, Sony had Spider-Man and a whole list of characters and Fox had the X-Men and Fantastic Four and Daredevil and all these other characters for a long time that Marvel was kind of left with like the scraps, as you were, and they had to make these characters really, you know, stars on their own. And I think they did a great job of that. I think Iron Man was probably the best character to pick for that because it was like people were seeing a new character that they'd never heard of, but that had a history to him.
Like my dad didn't know who Iron Man was really when he first saw these movies. Now he's all MCU'd up, but at the time, I mean, he would have been like, now is Iron Man a robot or is he like, what does he do?
Yeah.
Like, what's his deal? And now he would never think to ask me those kind of questions. Like, he knows who Black Panther is, which is, I mean, he would never have known who Black Panther was. That's just not a comic book my dad would have known about. So it's so awesome now to have people out there like, oh yeah, Captain Marvel, Wakanda. You're like, what? You know what Wakanda is? That's awesome.
Yeah, that people know what like, you know, the quantum realm is and Doctor Strange. I mean, these far out sort of comic books that were nowhere on anybody's.
They were fringe.
Yeah.
They weren't the main
exactly.
characters.
And they were nowhere on anybody's film radar either. Like, who's going to make a Doctor Strange film and who's going to make an Ant-Man movie? You know, the fact that those are big characters now and they carry their own movies and sequels and franchises. You know, it's and the amazing part to me is that there's so many good characters and actors playing these characters now that when we lose a Robert Downey Jr. or we lose a Chris Evans as Captain America or these actors disappear from the franchise, they've got plenty of other actors and characters to take it over, and it won't feel as big of a loss as it would have, you know, maybe 5-6 years ago.
Don Cheadle will take over every role in the MCU if he needs to, and I'm fine with that. Great. No one will care. But like, fine, so have him put in a mocap suit. We're fine.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that this universe has expanded so well, and the fact that they even, you know, when they get to Hulk, you know, they moved the end credit scene up to the mid credit scene, basically.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want people to wait around until the end to see Robert Downey Jr. show up, you know?
Yeah, it was a very smart way to play that.
That's how much of an impact this movie made.
Yeah.
Within the 6 weeks between this opening and the Hulk opening.
Yeah, right.
Fun fact, Don Cheadle was going to play the Hulk of the new movie before they cast, what's his face? Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah. That's not true. It's not true.
I thought he was up for Captain Marvel.
Don Cheadle could single-handedly play every role in the MCU.
Yeah, he could.
He's that good.
He'd be an American Black Panther. I'm good with it.
I'd love it.
An American Black Panther in Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you guys want to remind everyone where they can find you guys?
Hey, guys, here's a reminder. We're the Minute Impossible guys. We do a podcast called...
Where are we at again, Jonathan?
Oh, Chris, I can't remember. We're at minuteimpossible.com. We have 110 episodes of the 1996 movie by Brian De Palma, Mission Impossible. Right now, we are currently recording Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo craze fest with guns and motorcycles and masks and doves. So it's a much different movie, and I hope we can't wait. It should be the next. By the time this comes out, we will probably still have not come out yet, but we will definitely have a trailer out. So go follow us on any podcatcher you've got. Mission Impossible. Excuse me, I just said Mission Impossible. It's Minute Impossible. That's the name of our podcast. Minute Impossible. It's a pun. Haha. Hilarious. Wordplay. So come listen to us. And if you don't listen to our podcast yet and want to get to know us a little better other than us talking on here, go to Facebook and find us on the Impossible Minute Force or at minuteimpossible.com. We also have, Minute Impossible on Facebook will also take you to those pages. So come join us.
Awesome, guys. Well, everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at patreon.com/thenextreel. Until next time, true believers.